Well, hello, fabulous designer. How are you? Welcome to Business of Design. You are absolutely in the right place. If your dreams of running your own business have not quite matched up to the reality of running your own business, yeah, that's what we do here. We help you match reality to what you envisioned for yourself when you first started out on the journey of being a business owner. And the episode we're going to talk about today is a topic, or the topic we're going to talk about today, rather, is something that is so fascinating to me. And it's this idea that we can make incremental changes, baby changes, little tiny changes, 1% changes in our business. And that will have a huge impact with enough time. It's kind of like compound interest in terms of money, right? You put a little money in the bank, and over time, that compound interest does for it what you cannot do if you're not putting away a small amount every time. So we're going to talk about 1%. And for this episode, we are going to return to a guest you may have heard on the show previously, Danielle Hendon. She is the founder and owner of Four Corners CFO, and they help provide financial advisory services to small business owners. And I asked Danielle the last time she was on the show if she thought, making a 1% change to your business would really matter. And the answer was yes. And I said, let's talk about that. I am currently rereading the book Atomic Habits, which is by an author named James Clear. Actually, I have a hard copy, and now I've got the audio version that I'm listening to in the car, and I'm all fired up again right at chapter 1. And it is about 1%. If you could get 1% better each day for 1 year, you would end up 37 times better by the time you're done. I don't understand the math because there's 365 days, but you're 37 times better at that thing. I believe the math. And I have seen this to be true for myself. And I need this message right now for 2 reasons: tennis and Spanish. I am learning to play tennis and I am learning to speak Spanish, and I'm frustrated with both of those endeavors. And I want immediate, huge change on the tennis court. I want to improve a huge amount with a few lessons, and that just is not happening. And it's also true with Spanish. I can read it pretty well. I can understand it if they'll speak a little slowly for me. But when it comes to speaking, I just freeze like a deer in the headlight. And I'm not content with the speed with which I'm getting better. And that's why I wanted to reread the book. Because, this is the moment where a lot of us give up, right? We kind of hit a plateau, and the reward from doing the hard thing, taking the tennis lesson or the Spanish class in my case, is not immediate enough. It's not instantly gratifying. And so we want to give up. The truth of the matter is, I think for a lot of interior design professionals, you may feel this in terms of your business. That you've listened to the podcast, maybe you've made a couple of changes, but you don't have the overwhelming immediate success you want. And the truth of the matter is, it's going to take a little time. But if you could make a 1% improvement in your business over time, you're going to be so much better. Now, Business of Design is a fast track. I guarantee you we can speed things up. But you could also take it as slow as you need to, given whatever's on your plate right now. So just think about that as we have this conversation with Danielle today. I think, well, I'll tell you this, it's impacted me. It's given me the motivation I need to stay on the path and keep hanging in with the tennis lessons and keep hanging in with the Spanish. And one day I hope I will deliver an entire episode in Spanish, but not yet. I'm not ready yet. You are definitely in the right place. We're so glad you're here. Let's check in with Cheryl and see what's happening at Business of Design. And by the way, if you need to move your business 1%, I guarantee you 1 month in membership, we can do way more than 1% together. So please consider joining Business of Design. Podcast is great. It gives you a little bit of information, but it doesn't give you the exact path to the future you deserve and desire. I want that for you. I have that future and I want it for you too.
Thanks, Kimberly. I'm going to start off the top by apologizing for my voice. I've been sick all week, and while I'm feeling better, my voice does not yet reflect that. So, apologies. I will keep this short. Our next BOD Live is happening on May 29th, and I'm going to be taking the lead. Promise I won't sound like this by then. We are going to be talking about operations and implementation. When you become a member of Business of Design, there really is so much available to you within membership. And it's come to my attention lately, based on some of the questions I've gotten from newer members, that sign up specifically for the BOD 15, that they don't realize the wealth of information that's available to them within the other courses. So we sort of have two pathways to go down. The BOD 15 is really how to run your projects. It's one course because regardless of what that project is, you're going to take your clients through the exact same process every single time. So we have one program dedicated to that, Business of Design's 15-step project management strategy. It really is a one-size-fits-all for every project you take on. The other stream is how to run your business, and that is getting paid, logging your hours, invoicing your hours, and collecting on those hours. Our pricing model, which talks about a multi-revenue stream. If you're a new member, I want to make sure that you're aware of what's in membership and what support is available to you. You can email me if you're like, this is the issue I'm having. I will tell you where to find that. You can post to the Facebook group. Other members are answering questions for each other. The great thing about that community is that you are connected with other design professionals who are learning, implementing, and using the exact same systems to run their business and run their projects as you are. So the other side of that is if you're a long-term member, I send out this quarterly check-in email, and it is written because I want you to be reminded of what's available to you, both the support and that you can reach out to me to ask questions. Sometimes you're so busy implementing that there's something that's still not working right, and you're just not taking the time that it'll just, you assume it just sort of works itself out. And I really am just an email away when you're a member. So I want to make sure that you're redirected. Sometimes you don't need to learn something new. You just need to be reminded of what you already know. So I want to do that for you as well. And sort of tips and tricks for actually implementing, dedicating your time and managing your expectations around the return on your investment that you should be seeing when you not just learn systems, but really implement them. So I want to make sure that when you become a member, are a member, long-term, short-term, wherever you are in your journey, that you are taking the actions you need to see the return on your investment, right? How is next month going to be different than this month if you're not making changes? So again, May 29th, 1 p.m. EST, it's open to all members. Please join us live if you can. If not, send me questions in advance. Recording is made available afterwards. We do have members around the world, so the time zone doesn't always work out for everybody. But I would love to see you on that call. So May 29th, mark your calendar. If you're not yet a member, please join us. I'd love to see you on there. And that's it for today. That wasn't as short as I was expecting, but thank you so much. Bye.
Danielle is back because we wanted to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is 1%. One little tiny percent. Does 1% really matter, Danielle?
Oh, it matters so much. It feels, and it's funny because it feels like it doesn't matter because our brains tell us it's not enough.
Right.
And then we don't do it. And then we don't get anywhere.
Right. All right. Start at the beginning. Where can we look for 1% improvement?
Okay, financially, my favorite place to talk about 1% is your profit. And it is by taking 1% of revenue and putting in a different bank account, not the bank account that's got all your business stuff happening in it. Put it out of sight, out of mind, make it a habit, make it the first thing you do with your revenue. So you get a check in the mail, you get money that hits the bank account through ACH, go take 1% of that, put it in a separate bank account, out of sight, out of mind, and watch it grow.
So are you saying every single time a client gives me a check or an e-transfer, any single time someone pays me any amount of money, immediately calculate 1% and put that out of sight, out of mind?
You could do it immediately, or what I like to tell my clients is I want you to do it before you do anything else with that money. So before you pay your contractors, before you pay for product, before you do anything else with that money, and that may be a once a week habit, it may be a once a month habit, depending on how active you are in the business and what you've got going on right now. I want that 1% to go before it pays anybody else. It has to go before you pay anybody else with it.
Okay, so it hits my QuickBooks. And as long as am I talking about revenue or net revenue?
Revenue, gross
Oh,
revenue, as soon as the money
gross
hits.
revenue. Oh, this
Mhm.
is exciting. Oh, I've never even thought about doing this before. And I know, Mike McCallowitz did a, BOD live with us. He's amazing and profit first. I know a lot of people do this. They put things away in a separate account. I don't do that, but I think this is one of those moments where that could be kind of fun just to watch what happens.
And it's part of it's about the profit and putting profit first. And I'm a huge Mike McCallowitz fan and setting that up. The other part of it, though, and this is also kind of a profit first thing, is training your brain to figure out how to solve the problems without that 1% in the bank account. So when you do have to go pay the bills and that 1% isn't there anymore, we are talking to a group of creative people who know how to be creative. Let's get creative with the money and the solutions to how we pay people and make things happen. If you don't have that 1%, but you told a client you were going to go get whatever specific tile, how do you go shop that around now? Did you need that 1% to pay it? Because, and especially being a woman in business, we are so prone to put ourselves last instead of putting ourselves first. And if you continue to put yourself last, you are on a trajectory for just burning out. And I'm sure this is everybody I'm talking to. I know it's me personally. We started the business because we love it, because we want to help people, because we enjoy being able to help and serve and do. You can't help and serve and do if you can't take care of yourself.
Mhm.
And that's what that 1% being set aside does. And once we get in the habit and you start feeling more comfortable with 1%, we're going to push the boundaries and push the comfort zone and say, let's make it 2. And now what problems does that bring to the table? And how can we solve them?
I love what you said. How can we be more creative about solving our needs to outsource, to deliver things to clients, et cetera, et cetera? Okay, so 1% off gross revenue, whatever time frame you set up for yourself to make that calculation, but before that money goes to pay anybody else, you pull that out and you put it in a separate account. I like that. Tell no one. It's just yours. I've
It's
been
just
looking, it's
yours.
just yours. I've been begging my children to start being more aggressive about their savings. And I'm like, what about 1%? 1%. And the problem with 1% is it just doesn't sound like enough.
No, but if you put it in that separate account, and this is part of why I love it, you will see it grow. And I challenge anybody who's not doing this right now, do it for 1 year and then give yourself a bonus out of it and tell me the following year that that 1% wasn't good enough.
Right. Oh gosh. Okay. 1%. Let's talk about 1% in other areas. One of the things I talk to designers about all the time is increasing the discounts you get, your preferred pricing. And often they'll go to a supplier and say, 20% is not enough. I'd like to get 30%. The supplier says, no, 30% is too high. And they go, oh, well, okay, 20%. What about 21%? What about 22%? What about 23%? What does that do for our business when we make that commitment, or when we make that ask, when we make that request and it's successful?
Oh, the same thing. So think about, and I'm going to talk a little bit financial for a minute. There's 3 profit levers everybody can pull in their business, and the 1% applies in all 3 places, but you're talking about one of them right now. When you reduce your costs, you increase your profit. Every percent that you can get added to that discount is a percent that you are getting in profit. And 1%, if it doesn't feel like much to you, it's not going to feel like much to them either. But it's that 1% in your pocket now instead of theirs.
And it's that, empowerment that you're going to feel when you say, how about 21%? How about 22.5%? I need you to give me something. It seems unreasonable to say no when you say 21%. or 22% or 25%. It does
Mm.
seem from the vendor's perspective, it's kind of unreasonable not to give in to that request.
Especially if you've got a great relationship. They want to
Right.
maintain that relationship just as much as you do. They've got their markups, they've got their, like, they've got profit margins that they're able to give these discounts out of. And
Mhm.
if you're buying enough from them, they don't want to lose that.
Yeah. And if you're not asking, you're not getting.
No, you're definitely not. The other side of it, where 1% applies and is another one of our profit levers, is your rates. When's the last time you raised your rates? As we're recording this, we are at record inflation. And if you have not come up to rates that reflect that, you're undercharging.
Mhm.
And I get it. It feels, I've had clients tell me, but nobody's got the money and it feels I can't charge more because everybody's paying more for everything else. You're paying more for everything else too.
Right. I think I don't know. We've never talked about this before. You need to raise your rate, continuously, at least once a year.
Oh, yeah, if not more. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that haven't touched their rates in 2 or 3 years.
Right.
And I'm
At
like, you're
least,
talking pandemic level rates that you're still charging with 10% inflation going on in the world right now.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a mistake. Okay, so the three profit levers are, hit us with those three again.
Raise your rates, cut your costs. And then this one requires a little bit of digging. And we talked about some of this digging on our last podcast, but knowing your most profitable product or service and go sell the heck out of that. That's where your marketing dollars should be. Sell more of the most profitable thing and less of the less profitable things, and you'll have more profit to put in your pocket.
So wise. I remember, I don't know what year it was, but we were doing some analytics for some reason. And I discovered, wow, I make the most money on draperies, on window coverings. It's just incredible to me. I hadn't realized that before. And on end tables and small case goods, nah, not so much money. So you're right. I mean, really put your effort into making sure those categories are robust. And for some people, it might even mean niching. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to only do window coverings because that's where I'm in my sweet spot and I make a lot of money.
Definitely. And it's also where let's use the window coverings as an example. That's where you're going to want to make sure you're integrating it as much as you can in all the different, like, oh, but who, do you want a window covering in your bathroom, don't you? Because that would look so much prettier.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to say I'm really a person who believes in impeccable integrity, and I would not pitch a window treatment anywhere I didn't think they really needed one. But you certainly could be aware that that's a big category for you. And if they say, "What do you think? Should we do shutters or should we do draperies?" If it's six of one and half dozen of the other, the answer is draperies.
Definitely. And I would never say to do something that
I
doesn't
know,
feel right in a room, but I'm like, when you know what those are, and especially for designers, you're going to want to probably know your top five. You're
right?
going to want to know what are the things that bring in the most money and where do the other side of this, we were talking about those vendors and those relationships and those discounts. You want to really be really good friends with the vendors that are helping you make those profit margins on those window coverings versus you could
Mhm.
probably shop around those end tables and look at a variety of places because you already know your profit margins aren't getting that great.
You're so right about that. There's so many reasons why you want to have a great relationship with your vendors and suppliers. I was just talking with someone. We're recording this in late August. I was just speaking with somebody about the Mitchell Gold closure. And, a lot of people had money in those they had orders in that company. And, depending on where you made that purchase, you may not get your money back. But if you did buy that from somebody who's a retail supplier versus straight from wholesale, and you have a great relationship with that vendor, that supplier, that retail store, they're probably going to take care of your money for you,
Hmm.
so there's some benefits there as well.
Yeah, relationships are so important in small business. And I feel like you almost become friends with the people that end up on your vendors and your clients, and it matters.
It does. And the other thing I was going to say is you might even use the fact that, you know, for example, window coverings you do really well with and cabinetry you do really well with, and you get a call for a job that wants none of those things. It's decorating a bedroom and they don't need drapes. It's, you know, they're in the middle of the country and if there's no reason to have any drapes, you might say, you know what, I'm going to take a pass because that's my lowest profit margin possible. I don't need it. Or, you know, maybe your kitchens or baths are doing that for you.
Yeah, capacity planning is huge. When you know what your capacity is for you, your team, all of the people involved, what is the capacity? How much, what is the maximum amount of work you could do? And then you want to have as much of it as you can be those profitable items. If you've got capacity and somebody comes in the door with something, then the question becomes how likely are you to get something that is more profitable right now that would need to be there instead. But you need to know what's going to make you the most money so you can spend your time there because
Can
time is not infinite.
Right. Amen to that. Can we apply the 1% rule to staff and hiring and outsourcing? Do you ever think about 1% in that context?
I think 1% applies to everything in life. So my direct answer is yes, but let me think about it for a minute.
I guess when it comes time to give someone a raise, you know, I was
Oh, yeah.
guilty years ago of just going, well, I'm just going to give them X number of dollars without doing the math. What did that look like? What did that mean? Did I want them to have more billable hours based on the fact that I'm paying them more money? No, it was just here's more money. Where now
Mhm.
I think I would be much more intentional around here's the raise I'm willing to give you. And in exchange for this raise, this is what I want to see in terms of performance.
I love that. And I love where I also see that happening is splitting performance raises between company and employee. So your performance, your employee is part of it. You as the employee is part of the performance. But then how we did as a company and getting that buy-in from your team, if our company does really well, then we can give this. But if the company is not doing so well, then we only can give this.
Yeah, we did that for years and years. We did profit sharing, and it was highly motivating to everybody. But you do want to be careful with that. I see a lot of designers who think, you know, I'm just going to give the staff, you know, 10% of this or 10% of that to
Ooh,
keep them right. And I'm like, oh God, no, please, 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 please don't do that. That is not how this works.
no, and where I see it happen more likely is you create a bucket. So if the company is doing really well, this is the bucket that we're able to give out through bonuses and rate. Like this is our availability for compensation increases, whether it's a bonus, a raise, whatever it is. And if it doesn't, then this has to be our bucket for it.
So that could be another 1%. We're going to pull this
Mhm.
1% out, and that's going to be the bucket. And if everybody knows how they're going to put money into the bucket, in other words, they know that an increase in sales is going to translate into more money in the
In
bucket,
that
and
bucket.
watching expenses is going to translate into more money in the bucket. You get
Oh, I love
everybody to,
that.
right? Everybody's on board with the same program. Then I think it's going to go well for you. I had this, you know, in the early days, and it was all my fault because I didn't have any of this process in place. But I had staff who would just like order new files from Staples. You know, I'd show up at the office and there'd be folders with flowers on them, and you know, the desk would be all decorated with, you know, new ergonomic this and ergonomic that. And I was like, oh, great. I wasn't paying any attention. Right. So enrolling those people in making sure that money is going into the bucket so that they make more cash at the end of the year
Yes.
is going to be really effective as
Oh, I
well.
love that so much. I'm going to have to borrow that. If you take, so just like our 1% of gross revenue for you, if you put 1% of net income, because that's after all the expenses trickle down, and you say, look, team, we're going to put 1% of net income into a compensation bucket that we can use to award bonuses and salary increases, and everybody's contribution counts.
Right. And you know, maybe some financial literacy for your team. Here's how you can contribute. You know, if
Mhm.
you're the person who does procurement and you're talking to suppliers, if you get deeper discounts, better
Get that
preferred pricing,
1%.
you're contributing to that bucket, right? So I think that's when things get exciting, when you see your team going for it, really motivated to make those changes. I think that's so good. So
Oh my
1%
gosh.
matters.
Oh yeah. And don't leave it at one. Grow it by one. So as you're getting used to all of these different processes, because 1% is all about building habits. Once you're comfortable with that habit, push the boundary a little and add another percent.
Have you had clients successfully continually add? And do you have anybody who's up to like 10%?
So we were talking about this a little bit in our last podcast, but I'm a huge fan of making sure my clients are balancing payroll with profit distributions because the tax benefits of that, we want to make sure we're doing all the right things. And I had a client where we started with, I think we were maybe $1,000 a month in profit distributions, and slowly grew that. I think we're at 3,000 now.
Nice.
And it's just those little bit like, okay, so we're doing really well. Let's think about what else could we do to pull those profit levers, raise rates, cut costs, sell more of the profitable item, and can we just bump a little bit more money over there? And they were already doing it on a monthly basis, so it was a matter of how can we increase that. But if you're not doing it at all right now, I'm telling you, you are going to have the best January ever when you set it up and wait 12 months and then you're like, we need to plan a summer cruise.
I love this. It's a bit like, you go to Las Vegas and you get these chips and they don't look like money, right? But you put that 1% aside and you can see that it's money. So often people think, ugh, 1%, who cares? I'm not going to argue with the client over this. If they don't want to pay this bill, I don't care. No, you do care. It's going to matter a lot.
Yes,
It's going to matter a lot.
it matters so much. And it doesn't, I love that it doesn't feel like a lot though, because it also makes it easy to do and easy to start.
Yeah, it's hard to make an excuse not to be able to pull that 1% aside. So thank you for that message. I think that hopefully, like, let's hear from you if you've saved that 1%. We'd love to know how that's translated for you. Danielle, we end every episode with design intervention.
Okay, so the 1% was my last one. Now I got to think of another one.
I know that led to this podcast. So your next design intervention will lead to the next podcast with Danielle.
I would say something that I learned very early on in my career, but did not come naturally to me. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. And when you're a bit of a perfectionist, failure is a big fear, but you're only failing when you give up. It is never failure until you give up. So as long as we're willing to keep going and keep trying and keep changing and keep pivoting, we are inevitably going to succeed.
I love that. I bet you there's somebody who's needed to hear that today. That's just so inspiring and it's so true. It ain't over till you say it's over.
Definitely.
I love it. Danielle, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on again.
Of course, anytime, anytime.